do whatever they needed to do. And decide how your market center fits into that, or your market centers. Again, I just want to emphasize that your local leadership is an essential ingredient. I will tell you that my team leader was trapped in her house, and my MC everything, except for the bathtub, on top of her 2 babies, on top of her with a mattress. It worked for a while. LT stepped up, and it's really important to know that some people will step up and become your future leaders. Interestingly enough, those people, one of those persons is now OP for my market center, P, and the other is team leader. So leader itself in these times, there's going to be a psychological in your community. And there's going to be a couple, 2, 3, maybe 4 different stages. So it's going to be cleaning up. You know I was down in Houston with a group from Joplin, and in Joplin it was a little different. Everything was just blown away until there was nothing to save. But in Houston, you've got stuff that's been underwater for like 5, 10, 12 days, and people say, no, I want to save it. Well, it's going to be delicate. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a hard event to follow, and it will be up to you and your leadership to do that. There's going to be almost 3 stages of emotion. There's going to be debris removal, moving all that wet stuff from their house that can't be saved, and they're going to have to let go of it. And that is human emotional loss. There's going to be some demolition. There's people's houses that are going to have to be torn down. And that is a totally different loss, and that may come at a later time. And then finally is the rebuilding. And I don't mean just building. Collectively, we have to rebuild our people that were impacted. This is why it's so important that Keller Williams is doing what it's doing, because it has so much power. It kind of brings us all into the same kindred spirit for a cause, and it gives your people kind of a sense of teamwork. They're part of something. They're not going to be left alone in a disaster. A sense of accomplishment and of pride in being part of our company. And I think you'll find it's really, but it's an incredible retention tool when people see this. However, having said that, that's not why we do it. And so as leaders, you want to watch the mood, I guess, for lack of a better thing, and the emotions of your people. As a leader, and if you're the #1 point person in your market center or in your region, you've got to limit the number of people that either have access to your operations center or access to you. If you do not, it will be 24/7 and you will wear yourself out. And I'll never forget, Mary and Mo called me and said, hey, Doris, you've got to take care of yourself first. You've got to take care of yourself first. Because I was going on 7 days, and all I had to eat was beef jerky, and so you've got to limit the number of people coming to you, because now's the time for you to delegate about issues that don't really matter in the long run. Your people be volunteers. So let them do their jobs. Don't double check on them. if it's a coffee pot issue, it won't matter in the long run. We could get it done. You all have to be feeling this, that during the recovery of, it's not a sprint. And yet we are resilient. We are awesome. And we're going to keep the eye. We don't deserve it. When I was in, and I don't ever want you in your disaster. Of my no, it's 70941. And if you ever you just want your people to see you cry, believe me, I've been, and I welcome, I have been, not the same kind of disease, but lives.
Can you send a message?
Sorry. You know, when you've got 9,000 people in the South Texas region, it's a little bit of a challenge. Let me try one other way. We're going to try one more time. It's not worth it to listen to every other word.
It's coming in very clear here.
Welcome. Insurance check saying, I want to buy a house today. You know, okay. And now you are in a what? You're in a seller's market because you have a limited inventory to sell them. So you see, be familiar with the shift book because things can change in an instant and they will change and they have changed for you. And then also know this, I learned this in Hurricane Katrina from a great friend of mine who went through it. And the same thing happened in Joplin, and the same thing happened in Sandy, and I'm sure it will probably happen to you guys. And that is this, the houses they go out and buy today with their insurance check, they're going to be back on the market in 2 to 3 years because it's not home. And the public bought based on an emotional feeling of being homeless. So tell your agents that. Be sure that there's no price gouging going on in your neighborhood because the feds will investigate that. Again, these are all just under my ideas for thinking clearly under pressure. And then we're going to have a few minutes to ask questions. So use all of your people's resources. People know people with dumpsters, people know contractors, people know plumbers, people know, just use your people and use their resources right now to bring the world back together. And it just creates a tighter community. Now, I'm going to tell you, disaster volunteers are already motivated. You don't have to motivate them. They are there, and they, you know, they are, all they need is something to do, and all they need is for you to point them in the right direction and tell them what to do. So don't worry about the volunteers that come into your community from outside. Just have things lined up for them to do, because they're already motivated. On the flip side of the coin, we can't overwhelm our victims. Those people who have lost everything, or are losing things, or are going to have their house remodeled, or whatever. We can't overwhelm them because they are already in such an emotional state that I mean, my MCA could not come back to work for a while. And to be honest with you, she's the most awesome MCA ever. But after the tornado, she couldn't do her job. And that's just part of it. And sometimes we'll have to send them, we'll have to use KW Cares Fund if we can to send them to see a counselor. Or we might have to use KW Cares Funds to give them a down payment for a new car. Or for whatever it is, we're here to help you. And I just want you to know that as part of the KW Cares team. And I'm here in Austin today, and I'm helping the KW Cares team get money to you guys and to help you in any way we can. And I'm going to spend the day answering the telephones with them. And so please feel free to call me anytime. Okay? So be careful with your victim. I know this where my team came in. You're going to have to be assertive, and yet you have to be nice. My Joplin team went to muck out a house, and these people were like in their 70s, and they were hoarders, and they didn't want anything to go out the door. And my people just went, "Oh no, we're going to be here for a week." But gently, they became friends with the people, and gently and kindly they said, this has been underwater, 12 days. I don't think it's gonna make it. And then they would say, "Oh, okay, we'll let that go." It's tough. It's so hard when people are making emotional decisions. So,
are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Can I help you?
I'd like a number 1.
Hello? Hey, Greg, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good. Oh, okay. Yes, we're on a conference call. Okay. So anyway, let's continue. Every element of your response is very important. So just keep that in mind. And just stay in your box. And keep focused on your people. Don't get, and their immediate families, don't get caught up in helping everybody's clients and, because it just becomes too overwhelming to take care of everyone. So just stay in your box because you can be most effective in that box, okay? Don't ever be afraid, please, ever be afraid of asking for help. It's just so important. You can ask your city for help. You can ask KW Cares for help. You can ask your fire department for help. You can ask your police department for help. There are so many places that you can get help. It's pretty important for you to remember that. And keep a sense of perspective, because when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to keep a sense of perspective. As a matter of fact, this is like the new normal. Life is never going to be the same again, and yet you are going to get through it. And I'm so blessed to be able to talk to you guys today and share this with you. You will get through it. And it's going to be a long, hard road. You will get through it. And look to yourself. I'm going to tell you, post-traumatic stress is a fact of life. And it's easy to ignore at first, but it's something that you will have to deal with at some point, either yourself or your people. So, just remember, here's what I want to close with, and then we'll open it for questions. We are just ordinary people that have found ourselves in an extraordinary circumstances. And yet we step up to meet the challenges that are presented to us. We do what needs to be done in order to recover and to restore. And in doing so, we're changed by the experience. So how we approach this next part of the challenge will in a large part be affected by the change within us. So here's a mantra for you. Adjust, adapt, and overcome. I love every one of you, and I thank you so much for being on this call. And let's see, let me look at some directions here. I think I can unmute you. Hold on. And then we'll have some questions. All right, you can, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself by saying, with *6. Somebody try that. All right, I'm going to try unmuting you.
Muted.
Oh, we can't hear her.
Unmuted.
Okay, you're unmuted now. We can talk. Hello? Hello? Anyone want to ask any questions of me? How are y'all doing down there? Just share with me how it's going. Try *6 to unmute yourself. It says you're unmuted.
Hey, Doris.
There you go, I hear you now.
Doris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hey, Doris, this is Michael from Northeast Houston, and I'm in our team meeting. We've got a room of about 45 agents here listening to you this morning. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story.
You bet.
So my question would be, obviously a tornado is one of those issues that you have no, it does not discriminate, it hits anywhere. Whereas a flood will obviously help, hurt properties that, may be prone to flooding. How's the best way we can help sellers understand what's going to take place in the market over the next 6 months to 1 year as far as their value is concerned?
Ooh, that's a good question.
All right, of course. It's Michael.
I don't think we can.
Muted.
I think it's going to be unknown. And we're not going to know all the answers. Here's what I would say, though. I would say, each one of you, when you can, get on the phone to each one of your past clients and make a phone call. And just say, hey, I was thinking about you, I was worried about you, and I was wondering if you were impacted. And that's all I want you to say. I don't want you to talk about real estate, I don't want you to talk about resale, I don't want you to talk about anything other than just those 3 questions. They will remember that call for the rest of their lives. Don't talk about real estate, just call and say, I was thinking about you, I wanted to make sure your family was okay, and I wondered if you were impacted.
Unmuted.
Know if they were impacted or not, but you can say, was any of your family impacted? That call cements in their mind at a very emotional time, and they will be your clients for life. Now, don't try to hit them up for business or anything like that at this point, because they'll just think you're taking advantage of the situation. However, when the time comes that we will get back into real estate, into a regular real estate market, then you will be the person they call.
She's saying it's too soon.
Does that make sense?
Yes, too soon.
Hello?
Yes, thank you. I muted my phone again.
Okay, well that's okay. I wanted to make sure that answered your question. See, there's so many things that are unknown You won't know them now. You won't be able to predict. The best thing you can do is help homeless people find a place. And I'll tell you, right after the tornado, we had big sticky notes in our conference room all over the whole room. And we were triaging people. Okay, here's a hotel that takes pets. You know, okay, here's a family that has a basement that someone, with a bedroom and a bathroom that someone can stay in. Okay, here's a house that's vacant that the seller said they'd rent out because it hasn't sold yet. And we just triage our entire marketplace with those kinds of things. And so, having said that, then people could come in, they could see what's available. If they had a client who needed a place to stay, they will come to you if they know to come to you. Is your market center back open yet is my question.
Yes,
On you.
yes, I'm sorry. Our market center, we have a market center that's open. It's been open since the Friday after the flood, but we have a business center in Livingston that's going through remediation.
Okay, very good. So it sounds like it's happening pretty fast.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think that one thing that's really important is to understand the sense of urgency that your clients who have been affected are going to have. So we just need to remember to help calm people, to help educate people, tell them that the world we live in is going to be okay. You know, we had to have search and rescue each and every house. Hopefully you didn't have to have that, if maybe you did. It's just communicating the important aspects of the recovery process that will help you, your people, and your clients as we go through it together. And believe me, even though the world only thought about Houston for 12 days, KW Cares will not forget. What other questions do you have? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this is a 30-minute call, so you guys ready to hang it up?
Bye.
Or you want to ask some more questions? Or is May hanging this up on purpose?
Okay. So sorry for the technical difficulties in the beginning. How many of you watched the video of the link that I put in the email yesterday? Anybody go back and watch the video of Joplin, Missouri? The email that I sent announcing today's meeting, I put a YouTube link in there to watch the story of Joplin. And it would be interesting for you to go and watch that. Obviously, Joplin is a different natural disaster than what we went through. You know, they talked about the sticky notes. Well, their telecommunications were wiped out. All their towers were gone. Calling people on cell phones or getting on the internet, that was like gone. So that's why the Market Center really kind of ended up becoming the place where people went to get information, because it was one of the few places where you could come in and charge your phone, you know, do some of the things that luckily we were restored with some of our services pretty quickly here in Northeast Houston. All right, so we've done things a little bit differently because the call started at 9, but I want to give our sponsor some time to talk a little bit about their services. We'll get an update from AMCAP, and then we're going to get into two things that I wanted to talk about. Frequently asked questions, so when you are making those phone calls to your clients, they're going to come up. So I want to kind of give you some talking points, and then we're going to talk about a proposed form that we're working on right now as a market center that you may want to deliver now to clients that were affected by the flood. Even though they're sitting there saying, I'm not selling for years, they'll eventually sell. And they may need to have some of the stuff in place to be prepared to pass on to a future buyer 4, 5, 10 years from now, okay? So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon, who is here from Structured Foundation Repair, and he can talk about his services.
How are y'all?
Good.
Good. It's a little weird, to be honest, to come out here and try and market your business after such an event. So, but I'm here, so I'm going to. But I'm going to go through a couple things that we do as it relates to you. And then I won't take up too much time here, but I promise, give me the hook if you need to, because I can talk for a while. But and then I'll go through a couple little storm-related things that I think you'll be interested in. But anyway, what we do for you, or as it relates to you, if you have a buyer or a seller that's interested in a property, and let's say on your listing a buyer's inspector comes in and they flag the foundation for some kind of an issue, that's where we come in. You can call us out, and we'll do a no-cost evaluation for you. We have a comprehensive evaluation process that uses 3 main criteria to determine if a house has a problem or not. So I'll spare you too many details, but basically we look to see if there's a clear deviation in the elevation survey that we will take at the house. We look to see if there's stress to accompany any drops or any upheavals in that survey, any deviations. And then we look at the elevation survey relative to the American Society of Civil Engineers guideline, which is the guideline that builders use when they construct a slab, and it's 7/10 of an inch over 20 feet. There are exceptions to that, but that's one of the criteria that we use. Anyway, again, we come out at no cost. I can do no better than that. I can't pay you to have this come out. So anyway, so it's free. But anyway, as it relates to all the flooding and the events that we just had, the things that we're seeing out there is a couple different things that can happen when you have 52 inches of rain. First of all, the soil, we sit on a clay soil, and that soil will expand generally when it gets wet, and it shrinks when it gets dry. When you get 52 inches of rain, that can actually cause the soil to lose its load-bearing capacity. And so that's why even with little wind, sometimes you see some of these trees that'll go over. I've got one in my backyard that the soil just simply couldn't hold it, and it's starting to fall towards the fence. So that means that soil can undermine our foundations as well. And we've seen foundations where they can settle on the edges because it's been undermined. And I've also seen them much less frequently, but occasionally we'll see them where they'll just kind of dip like that, like the whole thing will move and the entire house sort of moves with it. So we're seeing stuff like that. The other phone calls that we're getting are things like, oh, we got flooded, we pulled the carpet up and we see a crack and we want you to come out and take a look at it. Also, I have to restore my house. I know I had a problem before the flood hit, so I have a problem now. Can you please come in and fix this so that we can restore the house? If a house has an issue before the restoration and you go in and you do all the restoration and just kind of, put the foundation stuff on the back burner, all that money that you spent doing the restoration a lot of it could possibly go to waste, and that the drywall is going to crack, the windows are going to separate, all that stuff that happens when you have foundation movement. So that really is something that would be best if you get it addressed now versus after the restoration, or just kind of putting it on the back burner, because it will get worse. Anyway, things that make our company different from maybe those that you're used to using. Hopefully you're using us, but if you're not, we do have an alignment system with our pier, and that allows us to drive them to a true refusal point. In other words, we put steel rebar through our pilings as we drive them down. What you may not know is that most companies do not do this. They simply use solid cylinders, and these are the companies that you and your family are calling, I assure you, because I see them all the time. But anyway, we use cylinders that have holes in them so we can put steel rebar in them. If there's nothing going through those pilings, they can simply misdirect on the way down, or especially after a big rain event like we've just had, the soil can actually loosen up the components of your piers up at the top and they simply fall apart. So after big events like this, we also get calls where we go out and, or clients will say, I don't get it. We had foundation repair done 2 years ago. Who's that good looking guy? And I just saw myself behind me. Some underwear model. Anyway, they'll say, I don't understand, we did this 2 years ago and this keeps happening, what's going on? And sometimes we can actually find components of their piers in the flower bed, out in the front or in the back or something. So you've got to have an alignment system with those piers. I cannot stress that enough. It's far too rampant that doesn't happen when these are installed. As far as our warranty goes, we define settlement in our warranty, and we take an elevation survey of the slab before and after the work is done, validating that definition of settlement, and we don't prorate the warranty. That means that it never reads like a service agreement. So you're never on the hook for adjustment fees down the line. In other words, sometimes warranties will read after the first year or after 2 years, you're on the hook for $150 per pier to adjust. You don't get that with us. We don't tier the warranty. It's straight, very black and white, very simple to understand. As far as the engineering that we provide goes, we actually will ensure you site visits in most cases where we can actually have the engineering firm come into the home to review the repair plans that we come up with, and then on the back end they come into the home to review the result of the repair. And so when we're done with any project, we always package up the initial and the final engineer's reports, final plumbing test results, that's a conversation for another day, a completion letter from the company, the warranty, and we'll give you the warranty transfer paperwork, so it'll be a really easy transfer and you'll have everything that you need to go to the closing table. One last thing, because I don't want to run too long, even though I know I'm fascinating. But and on that note, I do teach a 3-hour CE course, and I don't charge you for it. I can't do better than that. Yeah. I'll provide you all the materials. I've got a PowerPoint. You get to listen to me for 3 hours, which I think is super exciting. But we go into more detail about warranties and evaluations and how the industry is set up and buyers and sellers' perceptions. Everything as it relates to your industry. So I've already talked to Cindy up at the front about doing this, so we'll try and get something set up for you guys. I really encourage you come to this. I'd love to see you again. So,
is there a charge per square foot?
Is there a charge per square foot? No. No, typically the way that a foundation repair is going to be charged is by the pier. So average price by the pier is about $350 to about $385. But it depends on the repair plan. Of course, you're going to have to charge more for a smaller plan.
Right.
And depending on where you are, if you're in Sugar Land or something like that, it's going to cost a little more because we have to go a little deeper down there. So and then we include things like engineering and plumbing tests and stuff like that.
Are you going to hang out for a little bit so people can ask you questions after the meeting?
I can.
Okay.
I can, sure. I don't know how long's your meeting.
Just for another 30, 40 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I can hang out for a little while. So if I didn't give you a flyer, I've left some extras in the back, and I've got some cards here for you. So, yes, sir.
If your house looks fine, you can assume that everything's okay?
Yeah, what we look for whenever we evaluate a house, and the things that you can look for yourselves, but if you're out there for clients, don't make yourselves dangerous. Okay, don't find a crack and declare there's a $20,000 foundation problem, because the foundation guy bought you breakfast one morning. But anyway, we look for cracks in the brick, separation between window frames in the brick, door frames in the brick, garage door frames in the brick, freeze board separations below the eaves and above the brick at the corners where the fascia boards come together. We'll look to see if those are separated. On the inside, we'll look for the drywall cracks and the tile cracks and the doors that stick. Just having one or even two of these things sometimes does not necessarily mean that there's a problem. So, don't feel like you got to go home and look in the little beveled corner of your house that was built 2 months ago and flip out because there's a little crack in the corner. It's okay. We always get those calls, but anyway, those are some of the things that you can look for. But again, just having one or two of those things doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. Yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't know I was going to take this much
You
time.
mentioned on the, because there's 55 inches of water, how it changed the foundation. I'm just curious, is there anything flood specific, whether you just had rain versus being flooded with rising water in there that you've noticed in the current flood that would affect the foundation, or is it more or less the same?
A lot of erosion problems. I don't think I mentioned that, but erosion will of course undermine the slab as well. When you get like a corner of the house where it may have been built up and now all that is sort of come down because of all the rain, or it's shifted out to the street or whatever, And when you start to see that underflow, you know, when you put forms up and you pour concrete and you have the overflow, well, on those forms, there will be underflow as well, where the concrete will kind of squeeze out underneath the forms when they form the foundation. When you start to see that underflow, you've got too much erosion. So I'm seeing stuff like that as well.
Last couple of questions.
One question. You mentioned that when the land is wet and it dries, it creates an issue.
That
so
swells
how
and
long
shrinks.
do people who have been gutting the house have to wait to ask someone to come? Because now everything is removed. You cannot see if there is a problem or not.
Right.
And the land is going to dry. And that, how long they have to wait to say, hey, let's check? Because they are going to do the repair before the land is going to be completely dry.
Yeah, they can
So,
call us at any time. It doesn't.
I
It could
know,
be
but
wet or
what
dry.
do you recommend? Because the land is going to dry, and that's
Yeah.
when it's going to be a problem. It's not dry yet. It's wet everywhere. And
Yeah,
in deepness.
Even when it rises, if I have a house that has a problem, okay, normally you know, the house will flex up when it gets wet, and it'll flex down when it gets dry.
Yeah.
And so your elevations can read lower when it's dry outside. You know, a house that I measure in April versus measuring it in August or something like, well, unless it's the end of this one. But anyway, once it's developed a problem, even if the ground is wet and it's recovered to some degree, I can usually tell that there's still a problem. In other words, I'll still see the signs of stress, and I'll still see enough elevation change because it's progressive. It doesn't recover all the way. It doesn't recover all the way. It'll recover and then settle, recover and settle a little more and recover and then settle a little more, and it just gets progressively worse and worse. So even if it's wet, we can still tell if there's a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
One
welcome.
last question, Diane.
Is it likely that the underslab plumbing, any leaks in the underslab plumbing can contribute to the foundation problem?
It can, because
Does flooding impact that, or should we check that?
Well, if the foundation's been undermined enough and it moves enough, that can impact plumbing. I would not expect that is going to be a big giant issue with this, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for breakfast.
I appreciate the
We
time.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Flexibility. All right, Martin and Christy.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
All right, so that was great information, and the call was very informative. I'm getting taller, can you not tell? So what Martin and I wanted to share with you today is, first of all, please take your pens out, go on the internet, sign up for the 2 classes that we're having. We're having a class Wednesday from 2 to 3 with refreshments, and we're having that same class again. We know y'all come for food and other things, refreshments. And on Thursday, we're doing the same class again with lunch. So please come. What Martin and I are going to be talking about is, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the 2 to 203H loan. So we're just going to give you a little snippet about this because we want to entice you to come to the class to get more information. The 203H loan is a type of loan that is geared to 2 sets of people. First, let's talk about the renter. If somebody was renting a home or an apartment and they had been displaced, I have a young lady who's on the 2nd floor. She wasn't flooded, but the whole 1st floor is being gutted out, and her apartment is allowing them to let go of their lease. They'll be able to walk out of their lease and be fine. Perfect client that you can reach out to. You've had some renters that were displaced. They have to have been flooded. In the renter sense, the landlord, if they did or didn't have insurance, we're not going to talk about that just yet. The renter is displaced because the house has been flooded. They have to find a new home. That is a it's a great opportunity for you to help them to become a homeowner. 203H allows them to get into the home at 0 down. 0 down payment. It's kind of like a VA loan. So now your minds are starting ticking right now. So it allows them to get it at 0 down. Minimum FICO score is a 600. That too is going to open up some caveats for people that may or may not. Let's be honest, people rent for a reason. Sometimes they've been going through the certain guidelines. If they just got out of a short sale or foreclosure, bankruptcy, those things are going to still stay intact. But the other ones that we can help, this is a great opportunity. The other one is the homeowner. So let's be first and foremost, we're not telling anybody to walk away from their mortgage. That's the first thing Martin and I definitely want to say to you. But With that being said, FHA is going to allow people an FHA loan, same thing at 0 down. If they too have been flooded and do not have flood insurance and have the wherewithal to rebuild that house. That's where the 203H loan will come into play for them also. They too can qualify for another home loan, and it can also be another FHA loan. FHA realized there's been so much devastation that they're not going to make somebody stay in a home. They're going to give them an area, an ability to go out and get another loan as long as they qualify. Here's the thing, we're not going to count that current debt, that mortgage they have right now, we're not going to count that in their debt to income ratios. Okay, so I'm going to use you, Matt, for example. So Matt has a current home loan. Matt did not have flood insurance, and Matt's flooded, and he has nowhere to go. So Linda is his good friend who's a realtor. Matt reaches out to her and says, what are my areas that I can do? So she gets him in touch with Martin and I. Martin and I share the information that he could qualify for 100% financing, a 203H. It is an FHA loan. It is 0 down. They do have mortgage insurance. Now, Matt's probably thinking, what about my current home? I already have a home. Yes, you do. We're not going to count that debt against you. Any of the FHAs, and I'm going to be out there about other lenders, none of us are counting that debt against you. Not that we want you to go talk to other lenders, but we know you do have other lenders. And let's be honest, that information's out there for everybody. They're not going to count that current debt. What they're going to look for is the last mortgages. They're going to look at your mortgage history from August 2016 to August 2017. If there's no mortgage lates, they're above 600 and their current income, and they can qualify for another home, not counting this current home, they're a good candidate for this if they choose to. Now, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, what about that home, Christy? Are we telling people to walk away? We're not. There's going to be a lot of lenders, servicing companies that are going to be reaching out to people like Matt that have been flooded to see what's going on. If they wish to keep that home, they can keep it. This new home will be their primary residence. Remember, FHA only allows for primary residence. I don't want to go into too much more because it's going to kind of overtake, but come to the classes on Wednesday. Yes, thank you. That's what the class is for, Wednesday and Thursday. Anything?
So they still have to pay for both mortgages no matter what. They still have to pay for both mortgages.
Well, you'll find different things. We've seen credit reports that people have gone through disasters and the lenders have written that off as a disaster.
Yeah.
There's going to be different things, and those customers, we would definitely encourage to talk to their lenders.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to also bring up other types of loans that will help people, like a reno loan. So definitely come to the class with us, get with us, come to have a cup of coffee with us, sit down and talk with us. We just want to educate you so that you have an avenue for your buyers, for your renters, for everything. Yes, ma'am?
What is the rate of that loan?
Okay, to be totally honest with you,
yeah, they're comparable to 203B, which is the typical FHA.
I quoted one of the realtors in here. Her aunt is looking at it. I've already quoted them. It was regular 3.875 FHA.
Okay.
They're not going to take advantage of people during this time, guys. It's going to be pretty much the same, and we'll let you know as we quote the rates and everything. Anything else, ma'am?
Is this going to be temporary? Do you know how long?
Well,
1 year.
is that okay? So
1 year, yeah.
The time span, you know, I'm sure they're going to tweak it, but yes, that's what we're being told. And everything. Also, get with us about your flyers, yes, ma'am?
So are you offering any specific type loans for those who want to stay in their home, or would that be through FEMA?
That's what we're going to offer. We have the renovation loans if people want to offer it. We also have the, you know, people can do the inventory investment and do the reno loans with them. We'll go over that on Wednesday and Thursday also with everybody, so we'll have more time with you.
That's why we came up with 2 different classes. We know it's hard to get, you know, sometimes into your schedule, so we came up with an afternoon class and a lunch class, so hopefully you can make one of those 2 classes.
Or
and
both,
I bet they would answer your questions individually.
Yes.
Whoa.
Come and see us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So yesterday I spent time working on 2 things. The first was kind of just my quick little frequently asked questions. A lot of it are the questions you've been asking me because you've got a client that's asking you those questions. So I tried to put a few of these down. I'm hoping this will be a little bit of a workshop. We may be able to tweak these a little bit. We may be able to come up with some additional questions that we need to come up with a response to. That's the biggest challenge that I think you're faced with right now. You heard Doris talk about calling your clients. And you don't have to call your past clients. A lot of you don't have any past clients yet, right? But there's still people in your sphere of influence that you can reach out and touch base with them, see how they're doing, how's everything going. I mean, that's the #1 question. I got my hair cut yesterday. And what's the first question the lady asked me?
How should
Did you flood? Right? No, I didn't. I was high and dry. And then what do I do? How are you doing, right? So, you know, it's a back and forth conversation. Now, her previous salon flooded. So we got into a conversation about that. So, you know, that's the conversation that's going on right now. And of course, if they don't know you, they're going to ask what business you're in. You're going to talk about real estate, and then this list is going to come up, okay? So that's where I want you to be prepared with some standard answers concerning what's taking place in the market. So what I'm looking at is the Hurricane Harvey talking points or frequently asked questions side, and then we'll talk about the form here in a second. So the first question that I have, first I put on, it says, the weather related to Hurricane Harvey in 2017 caused significant historic flooding in Houston. I was reading an article in the Chronicle this morning. It was talking about the proposed taxes that City of Houston's thinking about imposing. There's some other things that they're talking about. And they quoted a meteorologist or a scientist of some sort who indicated that this is it was a 40,000 year event. I'm going to go look this up because that would make it almost like 1 in a 10 million chance, right? You know, so it's a huge number. But we talk about, you know, a 100-year flood or 500-year floodplain. When we talk about those, it's kind of misleading. It basically says, oh, you'll only flood once every 500 years. No, it basically means you have a chance of flooding in a 500-year time frame, which is a little bit different way of thinking about it. So because you're in a 500-year floodplain, you have a chance of flooding. You're not gonna never flood. Is that all right? Is that a double negative? Look at all my teachers in the room, right? You still have a chance of flooding in a 500-year floodplain, right? You have a chance of flooding in a 1,000-year floodplain, right? So I thought this was an interesting comment, a 40,000-year flood event, okay? So we need to help our clients understand that this was historic, probably, you know, never going to happen again in ours or our children's lifetimes or our grandchildren's lifetime, right? So first question was that I'm getting, what will this mean for Houston's real estate market? So what I wrote down, I said, it's hard to predict, which is what you heard Doris say, right? But historically, homes and businesses that have experienced flooding will have a discounted price compared to homes that did not flood. That's logical, right? And sometimes clients just want to hear that the logic they're thinking is the same logic you're thinking, right? Likewise, homes that did not flood will have an inflated price due to an increased demand for housing immediately following the natural disaster. There have been studies of homes that are in neighborhoods that frequently flood that the price is approximately 25% less than the competitors. Now, this was an article that I read recently where someone studied River Plantation. How many of you are familiar with River Plantation?
Yes.
Just across the freeway on 45, kind of north of the Woodlands, there along whatever fork of the river that is.
Keyword.
I mean, there's a river. Do what?
River.
Keyword river, right?
Yes.
So, almost any time the San Jacinto River floods, there's homes. It's kind of a little bit like Forest Cove. Forest Cove has got some very low-lying properties that are basically at the same elevation of the river, that when the river's out of its banks, they'll have water, right? And there's portions of Forest Cove, if you've ever driven through Forest Cove, you go up a big hill. And those houses probably will never flood, or in an 80,000-year flood, right? So they have a very less likely chance of flooding because they're at a higher elevation. So, you know, I'm always cautious of people talking about, well, Forest Cove always floods.
No.
So, you know, you have to take into consideration neighborhoods that have frequent flooding issues, and maybe not all the neighborhood, but the homes in that neighborhood. Those are definitely always going to be priced less than the competitors because there's that chance, okay? How long is this pricing going to be an issue? It will definitely have an immediate effect and can linger for months and in some cases years. But with Houston's strong economy and world-class setting, it will fade as home buyers seek homes in desirable neighborhoods with good schools and lifestyles, right?
Yes.
Homes in areas that flooded in 94 had a very small difference in price compared to other homes in their immediate neighborhood recently. Okay, now in 95, there was still a pricing issue. But as time separated us from 1994, how many were alive in 94? Okay.
10, it was 10.
I was in banking, so I had not yet started in real estate. I was still 3 or 4 years away from starting my career in real estate, and I was at a bank up on 494, which has since been demolished and taken over by Insperity. But I remember going down 494 and seeing the water over 59. It was over 59 in 94.
Yep.
So it was high then. Not as high now, but it was high then. And there was definitely a change in the market in 95. But homes that flooded in 94 sold last year probably for homes next door that didn't flood for about the same price per square foot. There had been such an increase in time that effect had faded. And that'll happen again for those in 2017. All right, so now you have clients that says, I flooded and I want out, what should I do? So that's going to be some of the conversations that you can have with Christy and Martin concerning some of their loan options. So I put a few things down here. I said, there are several choices that you'll need to make. First, do you have a mortgage and are you willing to sacrifice your good credit? If not, then you'll need to calculate the value of your home as is, potentially find a buyer who's willing to take it on with all the post-flood repairs. And will that value pay off your mortgage and closing cost? So can you help them calculate that? Potentially. You can kind of look at what they owe, what it's going to take for them to sell, which I would usually always add about 8% to that number. And that's how much they need to clear. And they're walking away with $0. Okay? Are they willing to sacrifice that and walk away and not have to deal with it? There could be a buyer for that house. And they will take on the headache of remodeling and fixing it up and putting it on the market. So then the next question is, have you considered hiring a contractor to complete the repairs and then sell it? That can be tricky as the pricing of construction is currently at a premium. If you can find a reliable contractor who can complete the work in a reasonable amount of time, it might be worth going through the process and protecting your equity. If you don't care about your credit, then you might consider a short sale, selling the home for less than what's owed. As your realtor, I can help you navigate the short sale process. Okay? Now, if they think they want to go short sale, what's the first phone call they need to make? To their lender. They need to have a conversation with their lender about that process. And there's some forms, and we'll probably end up having a class pretty soon on how to deal short sales. We dealt with short sales in 2008, 2009, 2010, as we were coming out of the 2007, 2008 recession, and we'll need to get our skill set polished again for dealing with short sales. All right, next question. What will I have to tell a future buyer about the flood? Everything, okay? It's best to always share as much information as possible to alleviate a buyer's questions about the property and to mitigate any trailing liability by not being forthcoming with your buyer. Share the list of work you did, when it was done and by who. Share pictures that you took after the flood, during the repairs, and after it was finished to show the quality of work performed. Share any inspection reports you conducted during the process, mold tests, moisture tests, air quality tests. These will help you have peace of mind these will help you have peace of mind that your post-flood work was appropriate for your own health and for future buyers. Okay? So, you know, they need to document. That's going to be important for your client. So this is something that you can help people with today. Your neighbors, people that are maybe down your street that flooded and you didn't. This is the kind of stuff you can go and talk to them about. We're going to share this information here in a minute. Last question. If I want to purchase a home, what should I be concerned about? So now we got buyers who are coming into the market. They're moving to Houston. Their job's moving them to Houston. And all I've heard about for the last 2 weeks is that Houston floods. So we want our buyers to go through the same process as before. They should evaluate a home based on its amenities and location. Once they found the right home, they should then start asking questions. Is there a tar seller's disclosure? What will the insurance on the home cost me annually? Is there a clue report? Everybody remember what a clue report is? Yes. That's for people that made a claim against their insurance, and the insurance company evaluated whether or not that was a covered item or not, came to a settlement, all that, right? So the current homeowner or a previous homeowner has made some type of insurance claim, and a clue report is a great way for them to hear that history. Is a property located in a flood zone? How much would flood insurance cost? If the home flooded, what remediation did the seller complete? Is it documented? Should I conduct additional mold test? So those are all great questions for your buyer to go through. I showed this last week, and I think it's a pretty good map of people that have made a claim with FEMA. So that's where FEMA has gotten this information. And they basically highlighted on here properties that were destroyed, there was major damage, minor damage, or they were affected by the flood. So I know from the back of the room it was like everything was destroyed, but if you get into it, it does have shades, because the lighter the color, obviously the less issue that they had. I read an article yesterday. I tell you guys, I'm one of the last 200 subscribers of the Houston Chronicle in Kingwood. I feel sorry for my delivery guy, because I think he probably travels to my neighborhood to throw my one paper. But I read a great article on the Kingwood-Summer Creek combination, right? Just a lot of emotions in that issue, a lot of, misunderstandings in that issue. You feel sorry for the kids and the parents and the schedule issues that are going on there. But this lady for the Chronicle wrote a really good article about that process. But right smack dab in the article, she said, since half of Kingwood flooded, blah, 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 blah. So I emailed her. And I said, I have to take issue with your comment about half of Kingwood flooding. I said, in my estimation, looking at maps, I believe it's somewhere in the 15 to 20% range. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. And she replied back and she goes, I was on the boats with the sheriff's office. I saw it. And then she proceeded to give me a list of every neighborhood in Kingwood that flooded, one of which being mine. I said, well, I live there, and I didn't flood. And I know even some of the neighborhoods you mentioned, you're correct, but there's homes even in those neighborhoods that didn't flood. Yeah. Kingwood Lakes. Did everything in Kingwood Lakes flood? No. No. What about Kings Forest? No. No. Foster's Mill? No. No. What about Micah's? Forest, Kingwood Greens? No, there's some. Yes. Barrington. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are some that were devastated, but not every home in a neighborhood flooded. And that's what this map is awesome about, is that you can actually scroll in and really see the homes in a particular neighborhood that didn't flood. So here you go. We get into Kingwood. We can look here at Foster's Mill, and we can see that there was a significant flooding in Foster's Mill, but there were definitely homes in Foster's Mill that did not flood. Over here in Kings Point, definitely homes that flooded in Kings Point. Did half of Kings Point flood? No. No, I mean, you can sit here and look at the map and see that maybe a third, 25% of Kings, when you get over here to Royal Shores. So, I look at this map, and I look at Kingwood. Does it look to me like half of Kingwood flooded? No. So we have to be diligent, and we can even do the same thing across the river for Walden or any of the other neighborhoods that had flooding. We have to be diligent as real estate agents to protect our turf, all right? Yes. So challenge people when they make blanket statements like that, because we need to help set the record straight, okay? We don't want to have some huge black eye that Kingwood flooded. Now I believe that the story of Kingwood High School merging with Summer Creek is going to be in the news frequently. In fact, I heard that ESPN is doing a story on the Kingwood High School football team. Okay?
That's good.
It's good, and it's bad. Because the nation will hear that Kingwood High School flooded, therefore thinking the community flooded. And that's what we got to help people understand. So with kindness, we want to help. I told this lady, I said, I loved your article on the school. That was a great article.
Positive.
But please cite your facts. Where did you get that number, that half of Kingwood flooded? Because if that's true, would half of the schools in Kingwood flooded?
Yeah.
How many schools in Kingwood flooded?
One.
Okay, that's a big one. But it was really just one. Okay.
Where's that map from?
This is from
Valerie shared that.
TexasTribune.org. So if you search Texas Tribune, you'll find it.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So as a buyer, if you're helping a buyer, this would be a great map to show somebody, right?
Exactly.
If you're trying to help somebody understand that half of Kingwood did not flood, this is a great map to show somebody. And of course, over on the south side, we can do the same thing over here with Kings Lake Estates or Walden, any of the other neighborhoods. Okay? So can you think of another question that we need to come up with an answer for? Kevin.
I did reach out to all my clients when Hurricane Harvey was here, just to see if they needed anything and send them their homeowners insurance and flood insurance.
Right.
Binder if they had flood insurance or whatever. And one of my clients, she asked for flood insurance, and I sent her the quote. I have that documented. And you know, she was not in flood area, so she had to pay for it after the fact. So they were supposed to bill her. Instead, they billed the lender.
Oh, because she's escrowed.
Yeah, they billed the lender and never sent her a bill, and terminated her policy due to non-payment on August the 8th. And they will not like do anything, like let her pay it or anything like that, even though they are the ones who told her, sorry, we sent the payment to the lender instead of to you. She assumed that she had already paid for it in her closing costs, I'm sure. But because it was done outside of closing, I mean, there's nothing I could see on my end about it. But do you know probably who she should call?
I hate to say it, an attorney.
Yeah, she works in, my aunt's an immigration judge. She works under my aunt, so she works in the great field to kind of have a start with that. So, you know, but I just don't know. I told her to just talk to some of the attorneys that she sees every day to see who she can.
Yeah,
I mean, don't know what to.
Part of it's going to be, I mean, I can certainly understand how that, screwed up for her, but, she has a duty to also ensure that it got paid or taken care of. So, there's going to be some responsibility. Will she get all of it? I don't know, but maybe she can get some settlement, potentially. But she probably needs to talk to an attorney. Yeah, Rick? We're talking about additional questions, so is there any additional questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, I'm in an area that flooded, let's say Kings Forest, and my house didn't flood, but all the houses close to me flooded.
Yeah.
Now my house was worth $500,000. Those houses are going to go for sale, and the ones that sell quickly are probably going to be sold at very large discounts. So if they, just for example, they start selling at $300,000.
Yeah.
Now when my house goes to sell, are those the comparables? And is my house going to come down to the
It's a great question. So it's really no different than a foreclosure type market, okay? So an appraiser will look at distressed sales, and he will look at properties. He's trying to find properties that are as close to that home as possible. And if other homes in the neighborhood, let's say that out of the 6 homes in the neighborhood, 2 were flooded and sold at discounts, he probably will not take those in as comps. He really can't, because they're not comparable sales. He needs to look for other properties that are as close to that as possible. So an appraiser should do that. Now, we as agents need to help appraisers understand that, okay? So that's why it's so important that if it was your listing, you show up and meet the appraiser at that property and show them the comps that you used, and you might even pull up the other recent sales in that neighborhood that all flooded and write flooded to help an appraiser not be confused about why some house sold so inexpensively compared to the competition. It's going to take our job. It's going to be our job to help an appraiser become informed about that, because they could be coming from all over, right? And they heard that Kingwood flooded, right? So we got to help them understand that no, not this house or not this section. This section did, or this section had flooding, but the house that this home is in did not flood.
So from
How is going to really know which house flooded? We can say whatever, but he has to have facts. How, which system they are going to use to know this house flooded? Because it's not always on the listing, right? It would be in the seller disclosure.
Yeah, it should be in the
So
seller
how
disclosure.
are
All
you
those
going
are
to-
So this map I think is helpful because you can really get down to street level and maybe kind of lay over a map and try to feel some knowledge about whether or not it flooded or didn't flood. There's a new field now on the MLS, so the listing agents are supposed to update that as to whether or not it had flood damage or did not. So the MLS, as opposed to the seller's disclosure, now has some new fields on it. So hopefully that'll help.
Is it going to be mandated that it be filled in? Some fields are optional and hard.
I don't know if it's mandated or
It's
not, but it
not.
certainly is.
You can't list it unless it's been.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a mandated field or not.
I don't think it was.
Well,
Okay.
Suspect if you don't, I mean, if it did flood and you don't put it in, it's a suspect. But if you put did not flood, that's a good.
Yeah. And kind of a non-answer is kind of a little
An
red
answer.
flag. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the back side of the form here. And again, if you come up with an additional question, email it to me. We'll keep adding to this list so that you have it, and we'll post it in a place that's easy for you to get to. So, Thursday night, I was at dinner at Amadeus, trying to support Tony in his rebuilding, right? Because he's had no flood insurance on Rapids. So if I'm going to go out to eat, I'm probably not going to go to Carrabba's. I'm going to go to Amadeus if I want Italian food, because I want Tony to be successful and be able to rebuild over here. So if you don't know about Amadeus, it's up on 494, right across the street from Second Baptist Church and the shopping center there. That's where Tony first started back in 1984, and then had great success there and built his restaurant on the water when it opened. And
How do you not have flood insurance?
2005?
I
None of them have got
question.
chimichurri has no insurance. None of them.
that was one of them had a GoFundMe
It's very expensive for a business. It's not like $400.
Again, it was a historic event, right?
One in 40,000 years.
Yeah, a 40,000 year event. All right, so ran into a Remax agent who experienced flooding. She's back on Royal Shores in the patio homes. And sitting there with Donna Duhan, we're talking about the flood, and talking about her house and all that. And she said, you know what, Michael? You and Buddy need to talk. We need to come up with a form that our sellers can provide buyers that can help them document the flood. Because it's going to come up. Instead of having, everyone have their own list of questions, let's try to come up with a standardized list of what would be good for a buyer to receive, and what, more importantly, what would be good for a seller to deliver, okay?
Yeah.
To help that seller, number one, create the right information so that they're ready to sell, whether it's in 2018 or 2022, all right? Because, again, the flood is going to have a lingering effect, and buyers are going to be curious about what someone did. So I started with a list. And I've already had some people, Donna and Linda, I gave them a copy last night as I was making copies, and they started reading through it and go, well, it should say this. I said, great, write that down and stick it under my door. So this is a process right now. We have not approved this form yet. I've sent it to Jason. He's looked it over. Of course, he added the language at the bottom. So we're still working on the form. So first question is, prior to August of 2017, the seller had no knowledge of the property flooding. Could there have been a flood prior to August of 2017? Sure. Tax day floods, Memorial Day flood, the 1994 flood, or any other high water event could have caused it, and the seller needs to disclose that. Yeah. If it says yes there, does that say it's a property that may have a higher chance of flooding? Yeah. Okay. Number two, the flood water did or did not enter the improvements, because you could have had flooding on your property, but it didn't come inside. And you should still disclose that, right? If you had water that came up your, to the front step of your sidewalk, should you disclose that as a flood? Yes. But it did not enter your property, so it didn't interfere with the improvements. It receded, and you mowed your grass, and everything was good. But I think it's still important to disclose that. During the week of August 28, 2017, the property experienced approximately blank inches of flood water.
Or feet.
Do what? Now, we put the word approximately in there because we don't want to make sure that, everyone doesn't have to be super exact, but approximately 10 inches, 40 inches, 60 inches, whatever the number is, okay? Number 4, the seller was able to enter the property and begin repairs on. Why is that important?
How long did it sit in the water?
Yeah, how long did it take before? You had some people that were out of town,
Yeah.
right? I was helping at Pat Eisengreen's house, and the second house in on that patio home street in Kingwood Greens, the days that we were there, and that was like on Monday, it still looked really like nothing was going on there. And we kind of started talking, and she goes, oh yeah, those people are in Europe. They just got caught out of town. Now, I went back the other day, and finally somebody was in there, but it didn't have the immediate remediation that some other houses have. Okay? The sheetrock and insulation was removed up to approximately blank feet. Now, I've used feet there as opposed to inches because that's typically what people are doing when they're removing it. It's either the 2 foot, the 4 foot, 6 foot, or the whole sheetrock typically is what they're doing now.
Yeah.
All the lower cabinets were removed. Why is that important?
Because it needs to dry behind.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our cabinets, especially kitchen cabinets, are against an exterior wall, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't pull those out, what's behind the cabinets? Sheetrock. What's behind the sheetrock? Insulation, right? So I know people are like, oh, the cabinets are going to dry out.
No, he has to go.
Yeah, Kristen.
Well, because I know my husband, he cut holes because someone, they don't have flood insurance, so they're trying to hold on to their cabinets. So they had someone come in, he said, if you cut out holes in the back of all of the cabinets and fan it out. And this is a 67,000
Make sure they note that in the
100 square foot home.
We didn't do it
I
right.
don't know.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and judge whether that's right or wrong, but the question is there.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Number 7, the following items were also removed. Door trim, door jambs, window seal casements, electrical outlets, cable phone outlets, and then I left other because I figured there's probably something else that somebody removed that I couldn't even think about.
Are people removing the casements and jambs too?
I've seen some.
There's some stairs in wood.
Yeah, stuff like that.
They remove all the wood because it was so wet.
Well, and I was in a home
Stairs
that is, I'm not going to mention the neighborhood or the builder, but I was not impressed with the quality of the material used in a very expensive home. It just was like a sponge.
Yeah, it's heated.
So it just was, I mean, that'd be a problem.
Yeah, the doors. But
Yeah, some of the doors, like we had a door that was on one of the closets up at Livingston. Now, Livingston only got 12 inches of water, but it's a hollow core door. So we're back in there, the day after the water's gone, and it's already starting to split at the bottom. Like, that door's got to go. Now, there's some solid wood doors that might be okay, but depending on the quality of the door, the material used, it might need to be replaced. Okay. The following flooring was removed: carpet, laminate, wood, or tile. After removal, the following product or products was applied to the structure. So this is what we're looking for: is the bleach mixture or the mold treatment mixture. I mean, I've heard some titles of products out there, but there's different stuff, and I've heard some people talk about that bleach isn't good enough, it's got to be something else, but no judgment here, just reporting what was done, okay? And then finally, additional moisture was removed by the following process. What are we looking for there? Fans, dehumidifiers, that kind of process. What else did they do? Number 11, prior to replacing the flooring and sheetrock, the following measures were taken: a mold test, a moisture test, an air quality test, and the reports are either attached or not attached. Number 12, the exterior HVAC system was replaced or serviced. Same question with the house generators. A lot of people have those, and they were floating, right? Or underwater. Number 13, the following pool equipment, pool surfaces, and outdoor kitchen equipment was replaced. So that was one of the questions that somebody came up with late after I sent it out. It's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. You know, I kind of think about my own house. Well, I don't have any of that. So, you know, that's important, right? And then the following contractors provided the services above. So people could list out who they used, you know, for the variety of different things, the remediation, the construction, that kind of stuff. And then we've got this statement at the bottom that the information is provided in addition to and the furtherance of the seller's prior disclosure. These additional disclosures are not intended as a guarantee or an additional warranty, and their specificity is not intended to create additional liability on the part of the sellers. Buyers are cautioned to obtain additional inspections to assure themselves that the property is free from moisture and the damage commonly associated with a flood event.
Amen.
So if you think of something else, then email it to me or give it to me now. We're going to work on this. I've already shared it with Buddy down at Remax. He is like covered up with the remediation of their own office. But he was really appreciative of that because I think we ought to work together as real estate agents. Yeah. It's not, you know, for us to have our list, and Remax to have their list, and Prudential to have their list, or whoever. Let's try to work together so that, you know, as we're working with buyers and sellers, you know, we're all kind of working from the same set of information.
And on that same note, when you have a deal that maybe was falling through and you're trying to get a hold of the other agent to, you know, to see if their buyer's still interested in your flooded home, or are they going to send the termination? To be patient with that other realtor, because there's a very good chance their home flooded and they're just in chaos.
I don't know if it's there, but it's very important to see when the gutted was finished and when they started to do the repair, because there is a drying time. Some people are rushing, which means it can be a problem in the future. So we want really to prove to people it's a safe house. So when the gutting was finished and how long they waited to start to repair and have the contractor to start. I've seen some houses, they gutted, the next day they started to do the sheetrock. They are in a hurry because they want to do as many houses. Is the business. Some people are not in a hurry. They told me, we will wait, we're not going to do it. It's very important.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And again, we have to be cautious of coming from a place of judgment, going, oh, that's too soon.
Yeah.
But we've given them the information so that a buyer can then go evaluate, you know, was it appropriate to start work within 1 week, or did they really need to wait 4 weeks? Because somebody may have moisture test, mold test, all that information that, or maybe only had 6 inches of water, their number of days for drying out might be different than somebody that had 3 feet. So I don't want to say you must do it this way, because it will vary, but I think that's a great, you know, when did they start replacing sheetrock? I think is a great question to add.
If the investor buys this house and they sell it, they do not have to give disclosures, I thought.
Say that again?
If the investor buys it, do they still have to do seller disclosures? Even though there's a relocation?
They're not a bank, it's not a mortgage property.
Yeah, they're still going to disclose. Yeah. I mean, what happens with most relocations is that the relocation company won't provide the disclosure, but they will provide a copy of the seller's disclosure. So typically most relo companies have a seller complete a disclosure. Hopefully it's our state disclosure, and they'll say this is being added, but the relo company won't provide a disclosure. Yeah.
You've got sellers or owners who didn't have a whole lot of water, so they were kind of doing it themselves. Is there a way for them to do a moisture test without having to hire a company to come in with a gauge or something?
Well, I've heard you can go and buy a little moisture reading thing, you know, and you can, you know, shoot pictures and take pictures of it, you know, showing the date and whatever, and do that. I don't know, you know, from a buyer standpoint, how I would feel about that. I might prefer to see some independent third party that, you know, maybe it costs $150 to come do that. I know there's inspectors that will come and just do the moisture test.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that costs.
Yeah.
So it might be good to start working your list of who does that and what they charge for that.
And in a estate sale, you don't need a seller's disclosure.
That's correct. There are 3 big ones. There's several, but there's 3 that we're going to be involved in.
That's a real big one, right?
New construction, an estate sale, or a foreclosure. Okay? Anybody else, investors, they're going to have to disclose. So if you've got an investor who's out buying these flooded homes thinking, I'm going to fix them up and sell them, they have to provide a disclosure. They don't get a free rein on that. They still have to disclose. Okay, Diane?
On number 10, talking about removing the additional moisture by the following processes. Possibly how long before that was able to happen, because there's some people who can't get their electric turned back on until inspectors come out and from the city.
Yeah.
Before they turn it back on, and there may be, there's a big difference between getting it dry out in there 2 days and dry out in there for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Boy, weren't we blessed with dry weather right after all this happened, though? Yeah. Oh, Lee, that sure helped. Leslie?
I've got a question. Okay, so I'm green on the whole flooding thing because it's something I never had to deal with, right? But as an add-on to number 14, is it a good idea to actually provide a spot to put more additional information for the contractor who did whatever service on whatever needed to be done with the house? As in
like a spreadsheet
name of
format
the contractor,
that had like contract
email address, phone number. That way, if somebody's really interested in that home, they could get in contact with that contractor and find out what exactly was done to that home.
What I might put is like contractor receipts attached, maybe there, so that they could attach those to the disclosure.
But if they didn't
and the
have
contractors,
the
do they actually do notes on what exactly was done with a particular home?
Hopefully a reputable one does.
If they're licensed.
Really busy.
I mean,
Sure, it's a licensed contract.
the one I got for Livingston, I have a detailed list of everything he's doing and the price he did for each section of that work. And then I'm paying him as he completes those items. So he didn't get a single dollar starting. He gets money as he completes sections of that at Livingston. So I could, if I owned that building and I was selling it, I could give that to the next buyer and go, here's the contractor, here's the work that was done, here's how much I spent on that. And I think a homeowner needs to be able to do the same thing. Jeremy?
What about a question regarding permits? If they're removing doors or windows, or I imagine there's probably being a lot of work done without permits. How's that going to play?
Down Gulf Coast too, because you need the windstorm, and you need a GI.
You don't need windstorm.
GI 8 down Gulf Coast, Texas City, Galveston, all
Yeah, down there.
Yeah.
Down along those corridors.
Yeah.
Certain counties. Harris
Yes.
County's not a windstorm.
Galveston County.
Yeah. Chambers County, a few of the others. Okay. I mean, that question's already on the seller's disclosure. Do you think it's being repetitive or?
Probably.
I'll see about that.
You have to have a permit no matter what.
Anything else? Oh, wow, we've gone way over. It's good information though, right? Yeah.
What about the people who do the repair themselves?
Yeah.
How are they going to pull everything?
Yeah.
Pictures.
Pictures, receipts and stuff.
Yeah.
The process. I don't think you can photos of
that.
It's just.
I mean, just think of all the people. I mean, we've been helping people that have mudded out, right? They didn't hire ServPro to come in and do that. I mean, there are going to be a lot of people that did it that way, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay, I think. It's the repair part, I think, is where somebody probably needs to make sure that they're very documented on what they did. So, and that's our counseling, right? Again, we need to be cautious of staying away from judgment and going, oh, we'll never be able to sell your house if you did all the work yourself. That's not true, okay? There are some really handy darn people out there that probably could do a much better job than a contractor. And so we have to be cautious of that. But we can certainly offer some resource information, some, how long should a house dry out, all that. Provide third-party information. Don't feel like you're the expert on that, because if you take an expert position on something, what happens? You create liability. So be cautious of taking some expert position. Just say, you know what, that's a great question. Let me see if I can't give you a couple of articles that I've read that'll help you understand what's the best way to treat that or to deal with that. Okay? Sandy?
Any new or continuing volunteer opportunities for us who, you know, like the Keller Williams Care warehouse, is
Right.
that still open? Can we
Yeah, it is
still-
closed.
Okay.
But they are, the next activity that we're going to have, which could be as soon as this weekend, is helping to shut that down, which is basically going to be loading some things onto trucks that need to be delivered onto Florida. They've already taken the big 3 18-wheelers, but there was a lot of stuff that was still left. Or it could be taking that to other shelters in Houston. I heard about that yesterday, and so we may have an opportunity to go and work on that this weekend as a market center to help shut down the command center here in Houston. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I know that there's a distinguishment between flooding on the actual property and flooding on the actual improvement on the property, the house. I had a guy, I was out doing a realtor thing, drinking at a bar, and he has a house that he wanted to sell, and he was like, my house didn't flood, but water got, I was like, well, did water get on your property? He's like, no, my house didn't flood. And I was like, well, did water get on your property? He's like, yeah, it got up on the curb, but it didn't get in the house. And I know that HAR is making that distinguishment on the Tempo right now or whatever, but how do they disclose that, you know, if they're selling their house to somebody, you know? I don't know if people really, I don't know, they may care, they may not care if it didn't get in the house, but I'm not sure how far to take that.
Where's the disclosures at? So on the disclosure, if you go back here, you've got this question right here. It says previous flooding into the structures, previous flooding onto the property. So on the TAR seller's disclosure, there's a distinction here that's always been there. So for that guy, I would say no, yes. And then there's a place at the top of the next page where he can provide any information. If the answer to section 3 is yes, please explain. During heavy rainfall, the water does collect up onto my yard, right? So there's people that have that issue, depending on where they're located on the street compared to the culvert or whatever. Right, Francie?
May I change the subject briefly? Because
Sure.
I need to leave.
Okay.
Okay, because I want to announce a broker Oprah that I'm having today with lunch and a $50 gift card. So take a break. Get away from thinking about flooding for a little bit. Don't have money. Leave your business card, leave your feedback, and be entered in a drawing for $50 gift card. It's in Oakhurst. It's high and dry. The house did not flood. It's available to sell now, to buy. Even some of the furniture is for sale, and I'll give you more information when we get there. It's at 24509 Sable Creek. I believe it's the only lunch today, so I better go quickly and get extra.
Great, thank you, Francie. Yeah, Tom?
I was just going to, off what Sandy said, what we have found at our church is that our area is getting about the least amount of help governmentally and even from the major denominations. So the Southern Baptists have not put resources in here like they would normally would because it's so widespread that they've been in other areas where it is. So if you're going to get out, please get out in our area because we are going into places now. We are seeing to this day we are finding people who still have not received any kind of help at all except what little has showed up. If you want someplace to go to my church.
Yeah.
I will hook you up. Yeah. And we will go into houses and you'll see some things.
Here's what I would say about going into houses at this point. Use extreme caution. You need to be wearing the mask. You need to probably wear gloves. Just be extremely cautious.
At this point, if they have not opened, we can't. Yeah. But we're now going in and we're doing the shockwave and we're helping them get ready to go back and behold. Most people, they don't have the money to hire anybody. They don't have the money. We're eventually going to try to provide other things, and I know others are. But that's what was shocking to me is that we are one of the areas where nobody is really putting any resources because it just does. There's other areas where it can be better used.
Yeah.
Who is helping our area are the people who live here.
Yeah.
So be sure and go help our area.
Good, thank you, Tom.
I'll get off my soapbox.
The Second Baptist Church have been helping for weeks and sending crews.
Yeah, I was wondering if anybody in here knew anything about, okay, my daughter's on the 3rd floor apartments in Kings Cove Apartments. They've evacuated the entire bottom floor, but they're staying here. My concern, and I know very, very little, is mold going through those units.
Yeah.
That's why they're letting us in.
So I would go back to that resource that we provided in that first week of tenant tenant issues, and there's some there's a free legal resource in Houston that I would have them go to for that. Now, everything that I've read has basically said that if the landlord is providing an alternative flood-free location, that they're still liable for their lease and everything that's related there, unless they gave them an out. And sometimes they might have given them an out, but if they're like, no, I'll take it, then they kind of take on that duty too.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I would say, the larger apartment complexes, I would feel confident are probably using the professional services, as opposed to some that I've read about down in Houston, that landlords should probably be run out on a rail.
There was one here in Kingwood, somebody was complaining that she was directly above a flooded apartment, and when she went in days later to the apartment below, they still hadn't removed things. But since she didn't flood on the 2nd, they said, too bad, you have to stay, you have to finish out your lease. And she's like,
yeah,
but you haven't even removed,
Yeah.
So that's
when I would reach out to those legal resources for tenant, the apartment rights, the advocates that they have in Houston.
One other thing, my husband was cleaning out a house this weekend, ended up in the ER with stitches, of course, because that's our luck. There's flesh-eating bacteria in Kingwood, I posted there, and E. coli on the west side of town. He's on 2 strong antibiotics along with the tetanus shot, so just be
there was
careful.
I saw a lot of posts of an agent, or not an agent, but a friend in Kingwood that had gone through the exact same issues.
Some people in Galveston
So,
too. They
terrible,
said
terrible
It's a lot
stuff.
going on in Galveston. If you've helped with anybody down there or been in the water down there, that same flesh.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of our wastewater treatment plants are open air, and they all flooded, and guess where all that went?
Right, but as the water disappears, people don't think about it as much, but
Yeah, wash frequently. Use the mask. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your participation, and thanks for all that you're doing out there in the community.